Hey everyone, it's Charlie Morgan here and welcome to Team Culture. So in this quick video, I'm going to explain the fastest and simplest and most efficient way that I found to embed a really good culture into your company. Now, creating culture and building a team and doing this isn't something that can necessarily be taught in a video. All of these soft skills, so to speak, in business come through experience, and they come through doing, and they come through discussion. And team culture is a very common topic that we discuss at mastermind events because it's not something that can just be like taught. I can't just give you straightforward instructions. It has to be built. It has to be built through discussion. And so what I'm going to do in this video is basically help you set the initial conditions of your team culture, and I'm going to let emergence and patterns of emergence and cause and effect basically do the rest. I now run a team of 30 people as of me recording this, and it's imperative to our success and the achievement of our vision that all of those people are, in some way, shape or form woven together. And the thing that weaves them together is the culture. And culture is basically how people behave when no one's looking. So culture isn't, how people talk to you or how people interact with you or as the boss. That's not culture. How you get along on a team meeting or whatever, that's not culture. Culture is front facing and back facing. And what that means is it can be, you have the culture that happens when people are looking. And, when there's accountability and there's team meetings and, this, that, and the other. But the true culture of a team is the thing that happens or the thing that people do and the way they behave when no one's looking and no one's holding them accountable. And the secret to building incredible culture is to be an incredible founder. The fastest and most efficient way to attract great people, retain great people, and create a great team culture, which is basically how we do things around the company. It's really kind of just culture. It's how we filter our behavior, how we think, how we behave. The way that you create that is by doing it yourself. And so what we're going to do in this video is create a resource. I'm going to walk you through how I've done this for my company. And through the creation of this resource, you're going to be holding yourself accountable to a specific culture and a specific way of behavior. Because it's impossible and hypocritical and contradictory for you to try to create a specific culture in your company when you're not behaving in that way. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to set a filter or a method of behavior that should be universally accepted by your team. But the only way for you to implement it, truthfully, is if you actually are it. Culture is a top-down phenomenon, and that's why great companies are created by great people. So really, we're just going to talk about creating a culture nexus today, which is a nifty little thing. Now, if I actually just pull this up, I can show you what I mean. So welcome to Team Culture. Here we'll explore the best way for you as the founder of the business to create and inspire a culture conducive to your vision. So once again, the definition of culture is it's how people behave when they're not looking. And people's behavior and the way that a human conducts himself in the world is dependent and pretty much exclusive to their value system. And what I mean by that is what people value, i.e., how they see the world and what they value to be true and what they value to be right, is typically how they will behave. And so if you find someone that values nihilism and, being all depressed and edgy and down, and they value, attention and being a victim, then that's the culture that they're going to abide by in their life. But if you have someone that values responsibility and strength and progress and, personal power, then that's how they're going to behave. And when you're making hiring decisions for your company, culture should be your foremost priority. Because I could find, for example, the best, most talented, most impeccable sales rep on the planet and, interview them and think this person's the best sales rep in the world. However, if their method of behavior or their value system doesn't align with that other company, typically I won't hire them. However, if you have a good culture and good principles, you'll almost always find that the great people that you want to hire are in alignment with your principles, because we're going to set some pretty universal principles that are rooted in the truth and will help you become successful. And so if you find them in other people, then you'll crush it. But it's worth making a strategic sacrifice for a cultural gain. And so the way that we do this is really with something that I'm calling the culture nexus. So a nexus or a nucleus is essentially something that everything comes out of. So for example, the nexus of the entire universe is the Big Bang. And so what we're looking to do here is create a Big Bang, so to speak, culturally. And so we know that culture is how people behave when no one's looking, and it's pretty damn important. And the only way to really have people hold themselves accountable is to introduce them to principles and for everyone to start behaving in alignment with those principles, so that in order for someone to fit in to the company and to be a part of the company and feel like they belong to the group in the tribe, they have to behave in the same way. And so what we're doing here is we're creating a cult, really, because if you look at the first four words of culture, we're creating a cult. And so when you start to introduce principles to people, when you have this cultural nexus and you start to hold yourself accountable, and so do your managers and so do your reps, the person who doesn't is then the odd one out, and they usually just self-exclude and you end up firing them. So there's a template here for what a culture nexus actually looks like. You can create it in a Google Doc or you can create it in Canva. So let's just take a look. And if I actually just show you this here and minimize my desktop and these slides, you'll see that we've actually got my culture nexus on my screen. And I have this not only on my desktop background, but I also have it on my phone background, as you can see here. Now, I don't always, you've probably noticed in the past, like I don't always have this as my desktop background. Sometimes I'll have the Roman Empire or some artwork, but at the moment, just whilst we're steering the company a little bit, I like to put it in there, okay? However, it's my phone background as well, as you can see. And I just made this in Canva, if you're wondering how. So basically what a culture nexus is it reminds you of the vision of the company. Like, why does your company exist other than the purpose of you making money? Like, what are you doing? Why are you here? It also reminds you of the mission, which is really the, concrete, tangible action that can be done to achieve the vision. So this is the cause and this is the effect. And then we have the principles, okay, that the company abides by. And this is pretty self-explanatory and pretty straightforward. So what I've got is 10. And as of me making the vision, mission, principles video, I actually meditated quite heavily on them, and you might see that they're slightly different here and there to what I showed you in earlier videos. But these are the principles that are going to get me to greatness and actually help me achieve this vision. And these principles I'm going to use for pretty much any other company I build because I believe them to be true. And so what I value as a founder and what I want my team to value and how I want my team to behave is A, building insane products that delight clients. And you've probably gathered that from the videos, at least I'm hoping you have. The second thing is worshipping clients, which is basically putting them first and just completely obsessing over their results. The third thing is high standards, which means that great isn't good enough. So, we want to constantly be raising the bar everywhere and constantly be holding ourselves to higher standards so we're never getting comfortable. The fourth is long-term thinking, which basically just means, sacrificing today for a better tomorrow. And then moving fast, which is putting cause to effect with speed. So this is basically just moving as fast as we can, doing as much as we can, as fast as we can, and that'll get us pretty far. Laser focus, not getting distracted, keeping the main thing the main thing. Simplicity, which is seeking straightforwardness. All or nothing, which is be all in or go home. Radical transparency, which is always speaking the truth. And absolute ruthlessness, which means stopping at nothing to win. So what you'll usually find is you have the principle, but then pretty much all of these have verbs, okay? With the exception of this one. But what we're finding here is all of these little descriptions here, they have verbs. And what this basically means is this is how people can action them. So you need to actually have some level of action, here. Like I could just put here, hold yourself to a higher standard or whatever. But this means that your team at any moment can hop in here and just receive the cultural instructions. And so what I've done with my team is I've just encouraged them all to make this their desktop background and their phone background. And I've actually sent them, the phone background they can use. And what we've noticed since introducing this is a massive uptick in team cohesion, performance, and everything that you could possibly want. And the other thing that I do, and the reason I have this as my background at the moment, is if one of my team members is taking too long to do something, or they're trying to put something off for tomorrow, what I'll do is I'll just remind them, like, I'll just screenshot this, and then I'll just send it to them in Slack, Or if someone's like, hey man, like it's going to take me like 2 weeks to do this, I'll just be like, really? And then I'll just send them this. And so the same thing applies if a team member comes to me with a really complicated solution. Like These things here are heuristics. These are decision-making tools, and they are right, at least in my eyes. And so if I find one of my team members isn't being honest with me or is holding something back, I won't say anything. Sometimes I'll just send them a screenshot of this. And the reason this works and the reason this encourages the action is because the team believes in these. And they believe in them because I believe in them. And when you're leading a team, they trust you. And, they're putting their faith and their futures in you. And so your value system, in turn, becomes their value system. And, when you introduce your principles to your team members, in the beginning, it's going to feel pretty uncomfortable and weird, where, it's going to feel like this weird corporate bullshit. Like, put the client first. Like, it's going to seem like this bullshit. But if you actually have faith in these, you need to just send it. And so what I do every time I talk to my team now, they probably get a little bit annoyed with it. Every time I talk to my team, I'm talking about the principles. I'm talking about the vision. I'm just constantly, consistently showing them this and putting this in front of their face. And we've started to notice insane results with this. Like sales reps, for example, the absolute ruthlessness thing. Like a couple of them just really took this on board, and now everyone's taking it on board. Like some other examples as well, like all or nothing. So my business partner and I recently sold our entire property portfolio, or we're in the process of selling it, because we listed these principles and we were like, how are we contradicting ourselves here? Like, what are we doing that's not this? And we found, okay, well, we've got this property portfolio that's like a hedge. It's like a safety net. Well, that's not being all in. Like we're managing this bloody property thing and receiving money from it. The cash needs to go into the business all in. So we just got rid of it. And so the thing about these principles and the thing about this culture deck is you have to live this. You have to hold yourself to this, because otherwise it doesn't work. Anyone can just write out some cool things and think, oh yeah, that looks good. But very few people can actually do it and hold themselves. And if you want to achieve your vision, build something huge and worthwhile, and actually create something great, the only way for you to do that is set some principles. You don't have to have mine. You can have some other ones. Set some principles and actually abide by them. Live them, breathe them in everything you do, every decision you make, every action you take. You need to breathe and live these. And so if I'm in the gym, absolute ruthlessness. If I'm talking to a friend and they're not doing the right thing, radical transparency. If I'm investing in stuff that's not the business, stupid. If I'm finding stuff that, complexity, I'm just removing it. So everything. Now you can create this in Canva, or you can create this in a Google doc like this. In fact, if we hop into Canva here, and I just take you over to Canva, you can sort of see how I created this myself. We can probably just find it. Where is it? Yeah, so you can see here. So what I did is I just made a 1920 by 1080. But if you've got a bigger monitor, you can create one of these. And then I just went in and found a phone wallpaper. I found a phone wallpaper dimension, because Canva just allows you to do that. And yeah, it was pretty simple. So this is the one for the phone. And you can see this. Just get your logo in. You have to make it kind of small. And if you want to do all of them, make them all smaller or bigger, you just drag them like this. But the reason it has to be kind of small is because like your phone blows it up. And then this is the desktop one. And so all my team now have this on their desktop, and they're all holding each other accountable. So this is how you create a sick culture, is it comes from the principles. Now, the other thing I'll say about culture is there needs to be a balance between fun and serious. And so you as a boss need to find the ability to sometimes have fun and joke around with your team. And then sometimes you need to be a total dick to them. And you need to be able to do both. So culture is a two-way street. And what this means is that you need to hold your team accountable to the principles, but likewise, your team needs to hold you accountable to the principles. So a lot of people make the mistake here when they create a culture nexus like this of thinking that it's just the team that needs to abide by this. Wrong. You study any great leader throughout history, any military genius, any great company leader, any great founder, any great CEO, anyone who's done anything great, and you'll find that they hold themselves to this way more than their team. And the extreme level at which you hold yourself to this will be the extreme level your team hold themselves to this. And so if you want to create culture, it's kind of like, there's no real way around it. You yourself have to be great. And you have to tell your team, like, I'm expecting you to hold me to this. And I did this when I introduced this to the team. I was like, look, these are the principles. This is how we behave now. You know, and it takes months to really of drilling this in before people actually start to listen. But I said to them, look, I want you all to hold me accountable to this. So if there's any a time that if you ever see a time or an example of my behavior or lack thereof where I'm not abiding by the principles, you tell me. You come down, you rain down hell on me. And since doing that, my team hasn't found anything because I'm taking this really damn seriously. So culture is top down. If you're not a beast, your team members won't act like beasts. So the steps are really simple here. The first thing is you create your culture nexus using your vision, mission, and principles. And you can do this in Canva, or you can just, use this example and make a copy and then basically just change it out. Now, I'd recommend not having more than 10. You can if you want, but the thing is the more you have, the less each of them mean. And 10 is quite a lot to contend with. So if you're not sure what to use, I would just use these ones for now because I've thought these through pretty heavily. But you might want to change the wording. This needs to be your idea, okay? And by the way, I got all of these from like the greatest, biggest companies on the planet. So pretty simple. And then you want to make it your phone background and desktop background. So you need to start living and breathing these principles. Everything you do is about the principles. And you do that. And then once you've done this, you introduce it to your team and you hop on a team meeting and you say to them, all right, this is how things are going to be done now. And the way that you back that up is you say, you're going to hold me to it and I'm going to hold you to it. And so you also want to encourage your team to make it their backgrounds so that they're constantly reminded of the vision and the mission and they're constantly aware of how they should be behaving. And the thing about ideas is typically it's just Chinese water torture. And what I mean by that is like people will adopt your ideas if they become familiar enough with them. And it's kind of like, how do we learn to love people or like people? It's usually just through familiarity. A primary example, the cleaners that visit my house every day. I've been here for nearly a year now in this house, and I've spoken to the cleaners, but I've never really like interacted with them or had a proper conversation with them because I don't think they speak the best English. But the thing is, like, I like them. Like those people, like I like to see them and I smile at them and I'm like, hey, come in, how's it going? Like, good to see you guys. And like, I've never really spoken to them. The only reason like that I like them is because like I just see them all the time. And that's just how the human brain works. And so if you want someone to like your ideas, you just have to constantly expose them to them. So this is why I'm just always on team meetings, referring back to the principles. And another thing that we do with the team is we have a team-wide team meeting every Monday. And what I do on that team meeting is I go around every single member of the team and I ask them to tell me what's one thing you've done this week that has applied a specific principle. And that really gets the team thinking about how they can apply them. And I'll always come with like 3 or 4 or 5 examples of what I've done this week that, abides by the principle. And that's that. So whenever making decisions with your team or alone, you refer to the nexus. So it's real simple. Like these are now your decision-making tools. And once you're unsure as to what to do, and maybe you've got 2 options, you pick the one that best abides by the principles. And every week you want to ask your team how they applied the principles. So like I said, on your team meetings, you want to constantly ask them, how are you applying the principles? And then the main thing is leading by example. It's the only way. If you're not holding yourself to these, no one's going to hold themselves to these. And remember, culture is what happens when no one's looking. And so how you behave when no one's looking is usually how your team will behave when no one's looking. It's a weird phenomenon, but trust me, it's a mirror. And this makes your team feel as though they're part of something bigger than themselves, and it gives them a solid reason to work beyond just making money. So for example, with sales reps, we found in the past that once they get to 10, 15K a month in income, they typically flatline and start improving. And a lot of the reason as to why that happens is because they've made enough money and now they're comfortable with their financial situation. But when they wake up every day and they're seeing a big, bold vision that they're part of, and they're seeing the culture that's enveloping them, weird things happen and you'll start to get incredible results. So that's just a quick piece on how to create team culture. Like I said, this is more of a mastermind discussion. It's not something that I can just magically teach you in a quick 1-hour video. So yeah, that's everything for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.